years ago, the horrific murder of a wealthy couple in Beverly Hills shocked the nation when it turned out their killers were their own children. Erik and Lyle Menendez were found guilty and sent to prison. But now a reporter says he has uncovered new evidence in the case, and he believes it could lead to a new trial for the brothers. He is here to reveal what it is in moments, but first, watch this.
The Menendez Murders, the story of two young, handsome brothers, Lyle and Erik Menendez, convicted of killing their own parents for the family fortune in their Beverly Hills home in 1989. The first trial in 1993 played out on live television for all of America to see.
A sensational murder trial opened today in California.
The defense argued the murders were motivated by what the brothers say was years of sexual abuse at the hands of their father, Jose Menendez.
He raped me. My dad had been molesting me.
I spoke with Lyle Menendez by phone almost a year ago, who told me about his father's alleged abuse. Describe your relationship with your father.
My father was. I worshipped him as a kid. He was a powerful business executive. He was a powerful personality, but he was a brutal child molester. So I obviously experienced some horrific experiences with him. It's still difficult to talk about. Same with my relationship with my mother, just very complex, very chaotic, painful.
What was your relationship like with your mom?
I pretty much spent my childhood sort of waiting for my mother to erupt. She is a volatile person, so we kind of just lived in fear of her and just sort of stay out of her way. And she was, I think, very much eaten up by the things that were happening in the home that she knew about.
The trial had two separate juries, one for each brother, and both ending in a hung jury. But the second trial was quite different from the first, closed off to video cameras, and evidence of any past abuse was inadmissible. In the end, both Lyle and Erik were found guilty, sending the brothers to spend the rest of each of their lives in separate prisons without the possibility of parole. Still, the brothers maintained they were abused by their father and that their mother knew about it.
I don't know how else I can prove what happened. People don't molest their kids on video. They don't do it in front of company.
But in a new book by journalist Robert Rand, a fresh piece of evidence has emerged that could shed light and perhaps prove the brothers' abuse allegations.
And joining me now is Robert Rand, author of the new book, The Menendez Murders. Robert, great to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you covered both of their trials wall to wall.
That's correct, as well as the investigation in 1989.
I mean, there's probably few people who are better versed in this case than you are. Would you agree?
I actually spent 2 days interviewing the brothers 2 months after the murders and 5 months before they were arrested, and they weren't suspects publicly, and I had no reason to be suspicious of them.
Wow.
I was writing an article for the Miami Herald.
You've been talking to them for a while, so all along, really. So the main defense at trial was that their father was a horrific person who abused them sexually and otherwise, and that their mother was an enabler and looked the other way, willingly.
That's correct.
Looked the other way.
But the defense was not, we were sexually molested and that's why we killed our parents. The defense was that the brothers testified there were a series of confrontations in the days leading up to the murders, and that the brothers were in fear of their lives. And that's difficult for us to believe. Looking at it through the prism of a normal person, their chronological ages were 18 and 21. But their therapist who evaluated them in prison told me that their emotional maturity was somewhere between 8 and 10 years old, and they couldn't imagine life without the parents or leaving home.
The prosecution says that these are cold-blooded killers who wanted the dad's money. They went on a spending spree after the murders, buying, fancy cars and fancy watches, and didn't at all resemble grieving children. That they tried to mess with the dad's will prior to his murder in order to make themselves, set up. And so that was part of the evidence of alleged premeditation and the push for murder instead of manslaughter in this case. Do you believe this should have been a manslaughter case?
I believe absolutely this was a manslaughter case. There was mitigating evidence, and all of the jurors agreed that this was a murder. They couldn't agree on the penalty. Manslaughter would still have sent the brothers to jail for 22 years. They've been in jail 28 years and 5 months.
the new evidence that you say you've unearthed relates to the abuse claim, because the prosecution got up there and said, sure, they were abused, right? Okay, that's why they did it. Why didn't they ever tell anybody before the murders that they were abused? This newfound claim, once they're on trial for their lives, that suddenly there was this lifetime of abuse, sure. And there was some testimony from people who said, they told me, but the jury didn't find it credible, right? It was family members?
Half of the jurors, actually most of the women in the first trial, there were 2 juries, 1 for each brother. Most of the women voted for manslaughter, and they did find that testimony credible. And one of the key witnesses was Erik's cousin, Andy Cano, who said that when he was 10 years old and Erik was 12, Erik told him about the molestation, and Andy immediately wanted to go to his mother, but Erik swore him to secrecy.
And that's where your new evidence comes up, right? The new evidence you say you have shores up that cousin's testimonial about having been told.
That's right. Erik and Andy Cano had a very close relationship, and they were writing letters to each other. There were a lot of phone calls. And a couple months ago, just before my book closed, I was visiting Andy's mother, the aunt of Erik and Lyle Menendez, and we found a letter that Erik Menendez
has written. Okay, that's where we're going to pick it up right after the break, because we have the letter and the information in it, and we'll read it in part to you after the break. Well, Lyle and Erik Menendez claim they killed their parents due to years of sexual abuse and a perceived threat in the days before they actually committed the murders. But the jury did not buy it and sentenced the boys to life in prison. Back with me now is journalist Robert Rand, who has details on what was in this critical letter that he has just unearthed. Now, the letter is from whom to whom, and why is it relevant?
In December '88, 8 months before the murders, Erik Menendez wrote a letter to his cousin Andy Cano. And in the letter, he discusses about how his mother is going through serious problems, that she's there physically, but she's not really there. And in really kind of a shocking paragraph, he discusses the molestation, ongoing molestation that was happening with his father.
Before the murders, months before the murders. We have an excerpt of it. I'm going to read just a part of it because it's long, but it goes, it reads as follows. I've been trying to avoid Dad. This is Erik Menendez to his cousin. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. Now, how do we know this is from December of 1988?
The letter is self-authenticated by content in the letter. He discusses a Christmas party that his family had just held for employees at Live Entertainment. And he also talks about the hiring of a new tennis coach, Mark Heffernan, that had taken place a few weeks before Christmas.
Could this have been something he just backdated? He just made the information appear as though it was timely, later on?
No. An attorney who is considering a new appeal is certain that this is an authentic letter from December of '88.
And normally these things are generally knowable. I mean, I assume there's forensic tests being done on the letter itself now?
That is taking place.
Okay, there's another piece of evidence that you raise, and that has to do with a guy named Glenn Stevens, who was Lyle's roommate at Princeton?
That's right.
Okay, so now we're on to the other brother, Lyle Menendez, his roommate at Princeton. Lyle also claimed that he was abused. And he had 2 Princeton roommates who testified. Both of them testified at trial, or just the one?
Yes, no, both Glenn Stevens and Donovan Goudreau testified at trial. And Lyle Menendez actually confided in both of these very close friends in the spring of '89, several months before the murders, that he had been molested. Donovan Goudreau and Lyle actually exchanged mutual confessions that they had been molested in April of '89.
But Donovan at trial denied that, right?
That's correct. And Donovan was one of my most prolific sources. I had had dozens of phone calls with him, and we taped a 2.5-hour interview.
But he testified for the prosecution, and he denied that Lyle had told to him that Lyle had been abused.
And 2 days before Donovan testified, he was very worried. He said, I am worried that they're going to ask me about the conversation when Lyle and I exchanged mutual confessions of being molested. And Donovan said, I said, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I'm not going to volunteer it, but if they ask me, I'll tell the truth. And when he was on the witness stand, he denied that Lyle had ever told him anything.
All right, so that's the one roommate. But now this is the other roommate we're going to talk about, Glenn Stevens, and whether this guy, Glenn Stevens, what Robert says he has from him on tape, plus that letter, could possibly get these boys a new trial or out of jail early. We'll pick it up there next. Welcome back, everybody. Here with me now is journalist Robert Rand with more on the new evidence he says he discovered in the Menendez brothers case, which is included in his new book, The Menendez Murders, his new details. But this is something separate that actually came up more recently than the publication of the book, right? This thing with Glenn Stevens. So he's the other roommate to Erik Menendez, or to Lyle Menendez at Princeton. And what specifically is he now saying?
Well, Glenn I have not spoken to him in many years, but I've been going through the hundreds of videotaped interviews I did going back to the beginning of the case in 1989 and 1990, and I found an interview with Glenn in which he talked about Lyle Menendez confiding to him that both he and his brother had been molested.
So he did not say that at trial. He was not supportive of Lyle at trial. So like the other roommate, it's sort of somebody who at trial didn't really say helpful things for Lyle, but when speaking to you say alleged that that Lyle had alleged abuse.
I have an audio tape in which Glenn Stevens said that Lyle confided to him that both brothers had been abused by their fathers. Yeah,
we should note that NBC has not been able to listen to that tape. We have not yet been provided with that. And I should also say that the one roommate, Donovan Goudreau, we reached out to him. He didn't want to respond. Glenn Stevens, we reached out to him. He said to us, Lyle never told me about any abuse, nor do I remember. If you have him on tape, he says he would be shocked. But do you?
I'm happy to come back and play that tape for you anytime.
We would listen to that. What do you make of this?
Tapes don't lie.
What do you make of this now? Because the jury in the second trial where they were convicted did not get to hear the abuse evidence. And do you think that would have made a difference?
I think it would have made a major difference. In the first trial, there were 65 defense witnesses who testified. Many of them were eyewitnesses to physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. And I think that can be just as traumatic to a 5-year-old child as sexual molestation. Judge Stanley Weisberg in the second trial reversed almost all of his evidence rulings. The defense was not allowed to put on those witnesses that were the heart of the defense in the first case.
Do you think we're looking at allegations like this differently now? I mean, the thought of a father molesting his sons, which, of course, I should point out, the Menendez family, outside of the two boys, strongly denies.
I think society has changed radically in 25 years. I think if this trial were held today in the era of the Me Too movement and the Men Too movement, I think the resolution of the case today would be a manslaughter and not a murder.
You don't think the jury was in the mind to understand that back then?
No, I think society was different. I interviewed all of the jurors after the first trial, and most of the men told me a variation that a father would never do that to his sons. I think today we have a different attitude about that.
Oh. Well, it doesn't, we don't know what the truth is in this case, and we'll see. It's a long shot for them to get a new trial, but we'll continue covering it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'll tell you, we also reached out to the county DA's office in L.A. for reaction to this alleged new evidence, but they declined to comment. We'll be right back.